Grand Slam, the second Grand Slam in a row in Formula One. Started from the pole position, led every lap and took the fastest lap point as well. But this time it was this man, Max Verstappen, for the Red Bull team. Disastrous weekend at home for the Scuderia Ferrari, and Max jumps to P2. So let's have a look at the results, shall we, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, quite exciting to see Red Bull at the front back again, like we just mentioned, Red Bull 1 and 2. Leclerc, though, that's going to be the big story, isn't he? Stalking the Red Bulls the whole race and really putting on some pressure, but that spin just towards the end of the race into the barriers. Very lucky to recover from that, I have to say. Lucky to get that P6. Great to see McLaren. Lando Norris at P3, and thanks to the stat man, we know, for the last 3 races held in Italy, this is the 3rd time in a row he's been on the podium. George Russell there with a fine 4th position. Bottas there, also great to see him in the 5th place there as well. Vettel there in 8th position. Good to see Aston Martin pick up double points with Vettel and Stroll in the top 10 as well.
Sean, you go first then. What was your takeaway of that, the performance in Red Bull Racing?
Well, I think first and foremost we have to say that we now know that this is not a Ferrari walkover this year. And it reminds me somewhat of how the early races panned out last year between Red Bull and Mercedes, because there was a point around about the Portuguese Grand Prix early in 2021, where we thought, okay, there was a bit of a blip there. Red Bull stole an early advantage, but Mercedes have come back. And now we're just going to have the same old season. Mercedes is just going to romp off into the sunset. That was not the case, and it went back and forth all season. This was the case today. Red Bull winning the individual battle at Imola, but we know Ferrari have the capability to strike back, and I suspect we're set up for a season-long battle between those two constructors in particular. It is noticeable that you mentioned at the top, there was a Grand Slam win in Australia and a Grand Slam win in Imola, which is when you win a race from pole with the fastest lap, lead every lap of the race. This is the first time in history that it has happened in consecutive races with 2 different drivers in 2 different constructors. So that gives you an idea that this pendulum is going to tip back and forth all season long, and it's the longest season in history. Yeah, there's a lot of racing to be done.
And that's the interesting thing, isn't it, Matt? And because it's, like you said, I agree, they're very much going to be Ferrari and Red Bull looking very close indeed. And I think we're going to see ebb and flow through the whole season. But the big question is really, can Mercedes catch up? You know, that's the big question that everyone's been asking at the beginning of this year. And Mercedes just had the worst weekend, I think, in a long time. So, you know, a lot of head scratching going in there. And hopefully, we'll hear from some Lewis Hamilton fans later on as well.
I think if I look at the performance of Max today, I think it was a surprise, wasn't it? I mean, he stopped lap 20 to get off the intermediates onto the mediums. A few laps after, I think Daniel Ricciardo was the first person to do that, but pretty much around the right time, let's say. And then stopped again on lap 52 to get off the mediums onto the soft tyres. That was kind of slightly defensive, wasn't it, towards the end after Ferrari's Charles Leclerc stopped. Then he finished 16 seconds down the road from his own teammate. That, to me, was a surprise, given that, I think, Sean, you were saying it, had only led 6 laps in the 3 Grand Prix so far this season. Marlon, were you surprised by how strong the Red Bulls were this weekend?
I think a bit more so, yes, because, I mean, for me, the result that Red Bull has as a whole, especially with Perez, I think there's just a solid structure within Red Bull in which they now know how to win world titles. And, Perez was still 15 seconds behind Max, but he did what he needed to do, which was just secure positions, put himself in between Leclerc and Verstappen. And he was just in it throughout the fight. I mean, the pit stops, maybe Red Bull could have done 1 lap earlier for Checo to not have this issue where he had to fight through Leclerc to gain back the position, obviously having done 1 more lap. But I think, Red Bull just seemed to be very gathered. They're not, obviously, with the previous results, panicking yet. And it's just the experience. And I think you just see a really good, solid duo. You do see a clear-cut number 1 and number 2 in the team, whereas Ferrari, they don't really have this solid foundation, I think, sometimes. And it kind of got exposed today, in my opinion, here in Imola.